Luke 19, verses 1 through 10. Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through. A man was there by the name of Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was wealthy. He wanted to see who Jesus was, but because he was short, he could not see over the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree to see him, since Jesus was coming that way. When Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and said to him, "Zacchaeus, come down quickly. I must stay at your house today." So he came down at once and welcomed him gladly. All the people saw this and began to mutter, "He has gone to be the guest of a sinner." But Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord, "Look, Lord, here and now I give half my possessions to the poor. And if I have cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount." Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come to this house, because this man too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost." Luke 19, 1 through 10. God bless the reading of his word. Zacchaeus is a chief tax collector. He is a wealthy man. People do not like tax collectors. They usually collect more tax than they should on behalf of Rome. The Rabbi Jesus and his followers are passing through Jericho. Zacchaeus lives in Jericho. Zacchaeus wants to catch a glimpse of Jesus. However, Zacchaeus is short in physical stature. The crowds in front of him prevent him from seeing Jesus. It can also mean that Zacchaeus is short in social standing. In other words, the people look down on him as he is a greedy tax collector. He is prevented from seeing Jesus by the people who do not think highly of him. Being the practical man that he is, Zacchaeus climbs up a sycamore tree. Jesus is about to pass his way. Zacchaeus experiences a surprise when Jesus comes his way. When Jesus reaches the sycamore tree, he looks up to Jesus. Luke 19, verses 5 through 6. When Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and said to him, "Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today." So he came down at once and welcomed him gladly. Most probably no one has called Zacchaeus by name for a long time. He is surprised that Jesus knows his name. Jesus does not make any judgments about Zacchaeus being a tax collector. Instead, Jesus requests that Zacchaeus come down from the tree. He also asks to spend some time in his house that day. Zacchaeus comes down at once. He welcomes Jesus into his house immediately. He is shocked that Jesus wants to spend some time in his house. He is a tax collector who is despised by the people. Not many people want to visit him in his house. I wonder, what is going through Zacchaeus' mind as he comes down from the tree? "Jesus, here I am. I am Zacchaeus, the tax collector. You're more than welcome to my house. May I invite your friends too? There will be more than enough food for everyone. You are the first visitor I have had for a long time." Luke 19, verse 7. All the people saw this and began to mutter, "He has gone to be the guest of a sinner." The people are surprised. Jesus is going into the house of a chief tax collector. Jesus is going to be the guest of a sinner. Jesus is going to the house of Zacchaeus. The people of Jericho are puzzled at the actions of this new Jewish rabbi Jesus. How can a rabbi visit the house of a tax collector? They can understand if Jesus wants to go to the house of the ruler of the local synagogue. Jesus, the new and upcoming rabbi, should mix with religious leaders. Why is Jesus going to Zacchaeus' house? How can Jesus enter the house of a chief tax collector? I remember taking both my children to the supermarket when they were younger. This was before they became teenagers. As much as possible, I would keep them within sight. However, it became too difficult to concentrate on the grocery list as well as be on the lookout for them. There were a lot of people in the store. Sometimes I would need to call them by name to remind them that I was close by. I can imagine what impact Jesus had on Zacchaeus when he called Zacchaeus by name. Zacchaeus realizes that he is not forgotten. Although he is a despised tax collector, there is another human being in the world who recognizes him and calls him by name. This week I came across this story of Fred. Fred lives in Oregon. It has been a bad year for him. It had been a bad year. First, I had surgery. Then a fall caused me a split eyelid and a shattered elbow. Pain was constant. I sank into guilt and despair and became my own harshest critique. I hadn't read the Bible enough. I hadn't prayed hard enough. I began saying to myself things like, God hates me, or even, maybe there is no God. I wanted my dad to comfort me, to hold me in his strong arms, but Dad had been dead for many years, and my dear wife couldn't fill the role. One day I flipped the pages of my Bible, unable to concentrate on the words. My eyes fell on Isaiah 45, verses 2 to 3. I focused on these words. I will go before you. It is I, the Lord, God of Israel, who call you by your name. There is a God, I thought, and God knows my name. God, the God of creation, knows me by name out of all the people in the whole world. I thought God is aware of my pain and suffering. I am not alone. God's strong arms hold me. I experienced no instantaneous healing, but healing and relief did come. My mind was at ease. Others may forget who I am, but God knows me by name. We might be in a public place like a shopping mall. There are so many people, and yet we feel lost and lonely. Then God calls each of us by our names. Isaiah 45, verses 2 to 3. I will go before you. It is I, the Lord, the God of Israel, who call you by your name. We are not forgotten. God remembers us. We are precious to him. God knows us by name. Jesus said to him, today salvation has come to this house, because this man too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. Luke 19, 9 to 10. Jesus tells the crowd that salvation has come to Zacchaeus' house. Zacchaeus too is a son of Abraham. Who is Abraham? God first appears to Abram and his wife Sarah in Genesis 12. The plight of human beings is not good. The worldwide floods happened during the time of Noah, Genesis 6 to 10. At the Tower of Babel, human beings tried to build a tower skywards towards heaven. God confuses them with languages, Genesis 11. Then God appears to Abram and promises to save the people of the world through Abram's faithfulness, Genesis 12, verses 1 to 3. The Lord had said to Abram, go from your country, your people, your father's household to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. And all peoples on earth will be blessed through you. The story of the Old Testament becomes the story of Abraham and his family. Abram's name is changed from Abram to Abraham, the father of many nations. Genesis tells us the stories of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and the 12 sons of Jacob. Joseph, one of the 12 sons of Jacob, becomes the prime minister of Egypt. Abraham's family then moves to Egypt because of a famine. They are brought back to Canaan through the leadership of Moses. They settle down as Israel. God eventually allows them to have kings. King David is the most famous. Jesus is descended from King David. This is something we sing about in our Christmas carols. Jesus tells the crowds that this chief tax collector, Zacchaeus, is a son of Abraham. Jesus reminds them that they are all children of Abraham. God appeared to Abraham and Sarah about 2,000 years earlier. God has kept Abraham's family going through difficult times. God liberated them through Moses when they were slaves in Egypt. God has kept them together even though they were invaded by Babylon in 586 BC. God brought them back to Israel after the exile in Babylon. I believe that Jesus deliberately describes Zacchaeus as a son of Abraham. Zacchaeus might be a tax collector, but he is still a child of Abraham. Whether one is a child of Abraham is not a question for people to decide. It is a question for God to decide. Luke 19, verse 10. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. Jesus refers to himself as the Son of Man. When Jesus refers to himself as the Son of Man, he's emphasizing that he is God who becomes a human being. He is the Son of Man. He is also the Son of God. Jesus is not an angelic being with wings. He is the baby born in Bethlehem and placed in a manger. Jesus is the Son of Man who comes to seek and to save the lost. It is not Jesus who is lost. It is all of us who are lost. Without Jesus, we cannot enter God's presence. We are lost. Jesus is God who becomes a human being to bring us back to God. God sends Jesus into the world to save us. Jesus even saves people like Zacchaeus, the chief tax collector. If there is hope for Zacchaeus, then there is hope for me. If there is hope for Zacchaeus, then there is hope for you. If there is hope for Zacchaeus, then there is hope for us, for all of us. Zacchaeus is totally overwhelmed by the kindness and grace of God. He realizes that he has cheated God and the people around him. He feels remorseful for his past actions. But Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord, "Look, Lord, here and now I give half of my possessions to the poor. And if I've cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount." Luke 19, verse 8. We see the extent of the wealth of Zacchaeus here in this act. He can give half of his possessions to the poor immediately. If he has cheated someone of something, he will pay them back 4 times the amount. Zacchaeus models what true worship is. It is more than a Sunday morning activity. Jesus impacts Zacchaeus personally and spiritually. Jesus brings him salvation by coming into his house. Zacchaeus opens the door of his heart to Jesus, who has come to save him. Worship is the opening of the door of our hearts to God, who has come to save us. When I was younger, I remember memorizing Revelation 3, verse 20. It talks about Jesus standing at the door of our hearts. Revelation 3:20. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in to him and eat with him and he with me. Here is another story I came across this week. It is about Anne. Having reached the age of mandatory retirement, Anne feels that the door has been shut. Having to accept mandatory retirement a few years ago from a university job that I loved, I felt that the door had been closed forever. I miss being around young people. I felt my daily interaction with them kept me young and in thought and in spirit. Retirement has also become financially draining. So when God opened a window of opportunity for me to substitute teach, I felt twice blessed. I spend a lot of time on my knees now, both physically with the children and spiritually because of the children. I pray for them, for their parents, and for those challenged with the responsibility of teaching them. I hadn't expected to begin my retirement this early, nor was this the way I had planned to spend it. Change has definitely become harder for me as I have grown older. However, because my faith is strong, I am able to trust God and remain open and full of hope. Doing so has brought a life much fuller than anything I might have envisioned, and has allowed me to meet my financial obligations. If we open the door of our hearts to Jesus, Jesus brings salvation to our souls, just as he brought salvation into the soul of Zacchaeus. Luke 19, verses 9 to 10. Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come to this house, because this man too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost." Amen.